This is the Clean Energy Show with Brian Stockton and James Whittingham.
Hello and welcome to episode 116 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
I'm James Whittingham. This week, Top Gear takes the Ford electric pickup to rural Texas. What happened next will not shock you.
Los Angeles has banned natural gas from most new buildings. Cut, print it, that's a wrap on natural gas in La La Land.
A new study shows people are more likely to want an EV if someone lets them drive one. All Brian asks is that you ignore the hundreds of Starbucks sticks on the floor of his Tesla.
The European Union will ban 90% of Russian oil by the end of the year. In response, Putin announced plans to hide tanks of oil inside slightly larger tanks of oil, inside slightly larger tanks of oil, inside slightly larger tanks of oil.
All that and more nuclear bashing on this edition of the Clean Energy Show. Brian, nothing happened to you this week, according to the script. Nothing at all.
No,
Come on, man.
And nothing happened to you last week, so I guess it's my turn to have nothing happen.
Well, after the show last week, I went promptly to get my fourth shot of COVID vaccine, something we've tried not to talk about anymore because it's, it's passing us by, right? It's there, but, we can't take it anymore. And my effects were not great. I felt ill.
You had, yeah. Well, I said my fourth shot was the worst one.
Yeah. So, and then here's another thing that made me think. I went to the public health clinic to get my shot, and it was on a semi-busy street, Park Street in Regina, and I had to phone. The sign said to phone before you went in. So I phoned, and someone answered, and I couldn't hear her.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was just so noisy because the building is fairly close to the street, so it's reflecting the street noise. And it wasn't that many cars, but I was thinking, Jesus, in the future, it was like a bad dream, in the future, but there won't be this much noise from all the cars. But she got so frustrated with me. She said, "Come into the building," and I just couldn't quite hear her. And she was thinking that I was had a mental problem or something, that I had was drunk or just lost. So it was just such a frustrating experience. So I ran back and jumped in my car, and then finally, but she was so annoyed by then. I try not to annoy the people giving me needles, Brian. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, well, I've been getting out a little bit more. I guess this happened to me. I went to see some live music at the Cathedral Village Arts Festival.
Wow.
My friend Erica was playing with the symphony. It was a fantastic show. And yeah, the first time I've seen live music in over 2 years. It was amazing.
That's amazing. Did you get COVID?
And probably got COVID. Yeah,
probably got COVID.
It was a street festival, and it was super crowded on the street. Everybody is, ready to mingle, I guess.
So I was sitting at Canadian Tire for about half an hour, waiting for the missus to do some what she does, and I was watching the Teslas come and go. And there was 4 of them the short time that I was there, coming and going from the supercharger. And nobody was having any problems.
Yeah.
They were just waving to each other. And it works. That never used to happen. You hardly saw a Tesla there. Now there's 4 of them on any random night at any given time. And wow, this thing's really taking off. And I'd like to thank the Tesla owner who gave me a little peace sign wave the other day and respected my humble Leaf to a fellow electric car. Usually Leafs don't get any respect anymore. When I first bought my car, lots of respect. Oh, electric people literally stopped me in the middle of the road. Now no one gives a crap. And Tesla owners don't even give me a look, but this guy gave me the peace sign. So thank you for that. Thank you for the acknowledgement and the respect.
So you love to talk about boring audio quality issues.
Not something people are talking about, but my audio struggles that we talked about the last couple of weeks. One thing that is a pain in the ass, and how these music services have high definition audio. Well, most people listen through Bluetooth now, through their headphones, or in my case, setting it to the stereo. And Bluetooth is a compressed format. It's improved.
It doesn't have enough bandwidth for all that. Yeah,
it's improved over the years. But so Elon Musk was asked on Twitter about this, and he says that he's may look into the Apple AirPlay protocol, which is Wi-Fi and it's compressed, but not loss. It's lossless. It's made like a zip file. It's compressing the data, but it's not losing anything from that data. So that's interesting. I know there's other protocols. I have one here in the house. I forget what it's called. It's just a different version of Wi-Fi audio. So that's interesting that they might do that, because I noticed when I took that high definition audio to my crappy car audio in Leaf, it sounded bad. That's because of Bluetooth. So yeah, it's just, you can't win these days. You can't win. I don't know what to do. So here's some updates to some stories that we've been following that I've got a quiz for you, Brian. How would Philips, the light bulb company who came up with a improved LED bulb, how would they solve charging times if they made EVs? That's my trivia question to you. And the answer is they would double the charging ports. And that's what Chevy Silverado seems to be doing, because a patent has been filed to show dual charging ports on the Chevy Silverado pickup truck. Now, keep in mind, these batteries are at least 100 kilowatt hours in storage. They're pretty big. Mm-hmm. And the bigger they are, the longer they'll take to charge. And if you're a company, well, that solves the problem. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so this is kind of similar to what we keep talking about with the Philips Dubai bulb, where they put in twice as many LED filaments and just run them at half the wattage, and it ends up with the same amount of light with a more efficient, less juice. So yeah, I guess that's the deal here. I mean, why not 4 charging ports?
I think that's what they talked about for the Tesla not the Cybertruck, but the Semi.
The Semi. Yeah.
They're talking about that. That's, it's your job to drive that truck, and you're stopping, just plug it in 4 times.
Yeah.
And yeah, that can charge a quarter of the time, assumably. So
no, and a lot of this semi-truck charging infrastructure really isn't built yet. So there still is the opportunity to kind of get it right, whatever that solution's going to be.
Of course, the question is, how much will would have, if everybody does, this would half the number of chargers available instantly, because everybody would be using 2. Although it would half the charge time, so that kind of offsets it, right? The fact that you're sitting there half the time doesn't matter so much that there's half as many, So I think another question is weight, Brian, and cost. How much is weight and cost is this going to add to the Silverado? Because cars, will it share the charger, which is on board on the truck? A little bit of extra cable and hardware. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it'll be okay? You think this will catch on?
Yeah, it makes sense. But I'm thinking sometimes I actually don't need the very fastest charging. Like if you're stopped somewhere and you want to go for lunch, you're kind of, you're planning to be gone for more like 45 minutes. So maybe you'd have the option of plugging in 1 cable or 2 when you need them.
I saw a post from someone today with a Chevy Bolt with a new battery, the battery that got recalled and replaced at great expense to GM. And he was convinced that the charging speed is faster and the curve is better. That the curve is higher more often, and the overall experience was making it a lot better on the highway. And he was aware of temperature and all these other things that may play into it. So I don't know. I haven't heard that from anyone else, but if anyone out there knows anything about it, then I'll continue to monitor. Brian, I'm getting bearish on the Rivian company who makes trucks, because every F-150 review, and I've read a lot of them, they're glowing. They're just unbelievably impressed. And it just looks like a frumpy old F-150. It doesn't look that different. Yeah. And it's using much of the same frame and components. But they're saying this is better than the Rivian. It's half the price. The Pro version of the F-150 Lightning is half the price of the Rivian. Rivian is a smaller vehicle, more in the luxury segment.
That's the odd thing about the Rivian, is that it's, I don't know, kind of tiny compared to your standard pickup truck. It's really, as we've said before, it's more like a lifestyle vehicle than a work vehicle. So but I think pickup truck buyers, they tend to want the work aesthetic or the work specs, even if they don't actually use it for work, right?
Right. Another thing that keeps coming up is their claim that the F-150 will, it varies greatly, like any towing, but you will lose half your range, which isn't much. That's the same as a gas vehicle. They say if you tow a big boxy trailer and use half with your gas truck, or diesel truck, then expect to lose about half which is impressive. Because I thought it would be a lot worse than that. And I don't know why that is. I think one of the reasons, Brian, is that a Tesla, like a Model X towing a boxy trailer, the Model X is very aerodynamic. So you
Right.
put something that cuts into that air and bang, you're going to lose a lot of range. But the F-150 is boxy and it's the same as your pickup truck, same shape,
Yeah.
only slightly more aerodynamic. Like the running boards are more aerodynamic on the Lightning for some reason, and I'm sure, the wheels and things like that will be getting there too. So that's interesting. I got more on the F-150 coming up in the show because Top Gear did a piece, and I'm going to talk about that and play a clip.
Okay, so yeah, the city of Los Angeles has banned most gas appliances in new homes. So this is a huge deal. This is the second largest city in the United States.
So, Brian, does this mean if they're banning gas heating? When you say
it's
appliances,
gas, everything. And of course, it's California, so it doesn't get crazy cold. So, a lot easier to heat with electricity to begin with. But yeah, this is basically like there's certain exceptions for certain things or types of buildings, and this hasn't even been fully ratified yet. But this is basically the end to natural gas in new construction in Los Angeles. And, the counselor that put it forward was sort of apologizing that they were so late to the party because 50 other California cities and counties have already adopted these kinds of measures.
San Francisco being one, I know.
Yeah, so in California, they're kind of late to the party, but being like such a huge city and such a huge player, this is obviously a super big deal.
So it's kind of easier for California because, like you say, it's a warmer climate by and large, and you could probably use heat. Certainly, everybody's got an air conditioner, so you could have a heat pump that works in both directions. Or you could just use baseboard heating or something like that because it's cheaper than a natural gas connection.
No, and I have relatives in California, and I remember visiting them when I was a kid, and like most of the time, they just used electric blankets on their beds.
Is that right?
That
seems uncomfortable.
Well, I guess it depends, but
seems like
why heat the whole house if you just heat the bed?
Huh? Do they live in Stockton, California?
No,
they should though, shouldn't they? I mean, theoretically,
they absolutely should.
Have you ever thought?
I hear real estate's cheap there.
Really? You could retire in Stockton. I think that would be. That would be interesting. Where's Brian?
There's an idea.
He's in Stockton.
There is certainly some opposition to this plan. Some of the natural gas utilities, of course, are going to fight against this ban in Los Angeles. But I don't know. Things are looking good for this to be implemented very soon.
Will this happen in Canada, in the northern United States? Will it? When?
I've certainly heard people talking about, British Columbia here in Canada, that it's already cheaper now for people to heat their homes with air source heat pumps than with natural gas.
Yeah.
So this is an evolution that it's just going to come to us last because it's so damn cold here. So cold. And as you know, I'm trying to eliminate all the natural gas from my house, but where we live, this is going to be extremely difficult. But my gas cooktop is going to be the first to go. And that's the other thing that was noted in this article about Los Angeles is people are starting to become aware of the problems with indoor air quality with gas cooktops, higher incidence of asthma. We've talked about this on the show. This, poor air quality can lead to more asthma in kids. And this is something that people in Los Angeles are now becoming aware of. And, they're saying, hey, this ban on gas appliances is fantastic.
I look forward to it. And I think that Europe is going to be next, obviously, with the Russia situation that they're talking about doing that there. I saw an article today in one of Canada's major newspapers. The headline was something like, it's not too late to jump on board in investing in gas and oil and gas because, that seems like a very offensive thing to say. It's like it's not too late to get into child porn, like it's not too late to abuse children or it's not too late to kill someone. I mean, come on. Are you ignoring the climate reports that have been coming out? How can you ignore it? How can you talk that way? And I still maintain that the boom in oil and gas prices is good for it comes at a good time for transitioning because we're seeing the transitioning happening and we're seeing people really maybe a year or two or three quicker than they might have embraced electric cars and start to really seriously think about them and learn about them.
We have a lot of kind of natural gas news this week, and it's all kind of related to these same issues. So an article here from CBC just about the price of natural gas. So it's gone sky high already. Everyone knows the price of oil has gone up, but fewer people are paying attention to the price of natural gas, which is up a huge amount and probably will go even higher this summer. The same kinds of issues around the world with Russia and so forth are going to continue. But of course, we talked about possible rolling blackouts where we live if we have another heat wave this summer, which seems increasingly likely in the world of climate change. Well, guess what? Sometimes people burn natural gas, power plants burn natural gas to create electricity to run all of those air conditioners.
Right.
So if we have another heat wave summer, it's going to increase demand for natural gas. It seems crazy to burn things to create heat in order to cool your homes. But, this is the world we are still living in.
It seems insane to build a natural gas plant these days, even a peaker plant.
No, and I have another story about that coming up later.
All right. Well, let's get to the Top Gear story because how would you describe Top Gear? Are you a Top Gear fan, Brian?
Yeah, this is a British motoring program that's been on the air for decades. It's
Very
gone
popular.
through several different incarnations. I'm not familiar so much with the most recent incarnation with the current hosts, but it's still, one of those big sources for, automotive news and entertainment.
Well, they took an F-150 Lightning all-electric pickup truck to Texas, to rural Texas. Rural Texas. So Jack Ricks is the presenter's name, and he took it to a gathering of pickup truck owners and American patriots in Claiborne, Texas, to see what they thought of it. And opinions among this more traditional crowd seem mixed, according to Clean Technica, with some people pointing to insufficient charging points as the main reason why they thought the shift to EVs shouldn't happen right now. Don't know what Facebook page they read that on. And as some of the festival goers learned about the Lightning's power, though, and performance and range specs, their opinions started to change. Now, this is a 20-minute segment that they had on the show, and it's on YouTube if you'd like to watch it. But I did you the favor of editing it down to about a minute and change. So let's have a listen.
This is the Ford F-150 Lightning. This thing is the fastest, the torquiest, the most powerful F-150 ever made. It's faster even than the F-150 Raptor. And it's those kind of words that get Americans very excited indeed. This version will do 0 to 60 in about 4.3 seconds, which is just preposterous for something that is roughly the size of a small planet. Music, car, and truck festival. If ever there was a tough crowd for the F-150 Lightning to impress, this is it.
No, I don't. And I think we're being pushed into bottom because I don't like Biden, and I think he's pushing the agenda.
Is everyone ready for an electric version of it, or is it just...
No.
No? You don't think?
No, not yet.
No.
I don't think.
What's the drawback?
Well, it depends on who you talk to, because a lot of the traditional people from Texas, they like the power of a motor, a big motor. So,
But this has got 580 horsepower. So it's 580 horsepower, 0 to 60, 4.3.
I mean,
No way.
no way. I mean, yeah, for a city slicker type person, yeah. I mean, it might work all right for them, but that's what it's coming
My diesel
to.
truck right now, I put $125 and I get a half a tank. So I can only go like 325 miles and I got to fill it up again, or put another 125 in it. So why not just charge it and not have to put all that diesel in it?
No maintenance, no oil changes,
Yeah.
And it's coming to that. Everything's, we got to get better gas mileage and stop being oil
So independent on it, yeah.
But if ever there was an EV that could shift attitudes, it's this one right here.
Brian, the movies haven't lied to us. The Texas stereotypes are real. They're real. They're real. These characters in the movies and TV, they exist in rural Texas.
Maybe it's just the accent is convincing you.
City slickers? Come on. I thought that was dead with the movie in the 80s when Jack Palance did a one-arm push-up on the Oscar stage, back before when people got beat up on the stage. No one would have beat him up doing a one-arm push-up. Anyway, it's a reference for the old people in the crowd who are old enough to remember that. But yeah, they were quite hostile, but then they were also quite ill-informed, you know?
So many people still just don't have any clue. And I talked to like 2 people in the last week who assumed that my Tesla would take gas of some kind.
What?
That it was
Are you kidding me?
That it was some, people still think that, oh, it's a hybrid, or, well, you can still put gas in it, can't you?
Okay.
2 people in the last week.
Okay, the stereotypes about Saskatchewan then are valid and we're much worse than Texas. I make fun of Texas, but I live in the Texas of Canada. Well, next door to the Texas of Canada. Really, I've never heard that from anyone ever. There's 2 people that you talked to in the last week who thought that your Tesla somehow took gas somewhere.
Yeah.
You know what you need to do?
What's that?
You do what I did accidentally once. Drive to the gas station. I parked to buy a car wash ticket, and then didn't realize that the guy was looking where to put the pump in because I was close to the front.
You were just going to buy it from the pump, you mean?
Yeah, well, I was sort of parked behind because it was busy, and I parked behind the person in front of me, and then he left, and the other guy was, okay, I'm going to fill this up. Where's the hole? And that was when I first got the car, and my kids and my whole family was in the car, and they were laughing their asses off at that. Because people have made videos on purpose doing that. But, you know, I don't know. It's just... Come on. You see, I'm disappointed where we live. I'm disappointed. Okay, come on, people. How could you be so stupid? How far away are we if we think that Teslas take gas? Come on.
And of course, people don't know the specs. They just assume that a electric truck is going to be
wimpy.
Somehow worse.
Electric cars
less
slow.
Powerful.
Yeah.
And wimpy. But of course, the exact opposite is true.
Yeah. Boy, when he heard the horsepower, he shut up, that guy. So that's... Yeah, these things, this is the fastest F-150 there is. There's many variants, but the...
of course.
What is it, the Lariat? That's the or is it something else? But there's one that's the fastest, sportiest, and...
The Raptor.
The Raptor. And this is faster than any of them, so... And, you touch that pedal at highway speed and you just chirp, your tires chirp because there's so much torque on that. And just the cost. I mean, the more gas you spend, the bigger car you have, bigger vehicle you drive, the more you save. The more you buy, the more you save. The bigger the metal, the more the savings in your bank account.
And that guy was talking about $150 to fill his truck, and that's where
that's
gas
for half
is.
A tank, Brian. That's for half a tank.
That's the cheapest gas probably in the world, and that's what it's costing him.
Yes. The cheapest gas in the world is in Texas, and he's paying $150 for 300 miles of range, which is half a tank. And the guy asked him, how much do you think you would spend? He said, $50. And the answer is $20.
Okay, so we have another edition of one of our favorite segments, Oil Ban.
Oh, well, because my computer ate that intro, so it doesn't exist.
Okay, that's fine. We don't need an intro. But so the European Union has agreed to a fairly massive ban on Russian oil that is going to take effect by the end of the year. They're going to cut, 90% of the Russian imports of oil into the European Union. This is a major deal. There's a slight exemption for oil coming through pipelines to Hungary. Hungary would be screwed without any oil at all from Russia. So there's a few exemptions here, but this is a massive, massive ban. And I just kind of wonder when all of this is going to come to a head. This is, Russia's primary form of income is all of these oil exports and gas exports. And this is going to start to hurt them at some point. And I really don't know. I'm concerned about what the end game is going to be here of all of this.
What are you thinking? What's going through your mind?
Well, it seems unlikely that Putin's going to change his mind and backtrack and pull out of Ukraine, but that would be the smart move and kind of get the money flowing again. But smart decisions aren't necessarily the kind of thing that those types of leaders make.
All right, Brian. Well, I did have the oil ban intro, so I'll use it as an extra.
Oil ban.
All right, J.D. Power's U.S. electric vehicle consideration study shows a lot of American consumers still need to simply get a ride in an electric vehicle. This is according to Green Car Reports that has covered this study. And the study, which was released just Thursday, found that among those who had no personal experience with EVs, such as rural Texans, say that just 11% were very likely to consider an EV. This is the United States we're talking about here. And for those who had merely been a passenger in an EV, the portion of very likely doubled to 24%, and those who had driven an EV rose to 34%. So your spousal unit got to drive your friend's Tesla before you bought one, right? So that was kind of a necessary thing because you can't go to the showroom and take it for a test drive. And none of them exist. No EVs exist in showrooms anywhere, hardly. Maybe in some bigger centers in California and Quebec right now. But for the most part, you can't even touch one. So the EV community, including the people who are not early adopters, but early consumers, I'll call them, the people who are out buying them right now, they love their cars by all accounts. They love their cars. It's incumbent upon them to actually let people drive the cars. How do you feel about that? You don't like people driving your car?
No, I don't mind it. I've allowed it on occasion. If you,
I'll allow
if
that.
you want to drive my car, you're welcome to. No, it's just where we are. But the kinds of ignorance that we've been talking about in the last few minutes of people still think that they take gas or whatever is that, everybody who has gone that extra step and actually bought an electric car, they all want to do their part to kind of dispel these myths because, once you've gone that step, what everybody else is in for and that they're going to like it once they try it.
Yeah. I have let people, in fact, I've kind of coerced them into driving my car. They didn't ask. I said, hey, drive it. They don't want to. I said, no, drive it. And, they have. But regardless how they feel about them, they can't say, they'll take that knowledge to the cocktail party circuit and they'll say, yeah, I drove one. It was fine. It was good. It was fast. It was zippy. It was quiet. At the very least, they'll say that. And beyond that, it acts like a normal car, which, people get scared about that fact that they think, they're not normal cars, that they're computers on wheels that are complicated and will break down. It's just so amazing because the less I think about combustion vehicles and then you have to go deal with them, they're just terrible. They're just so complicated. I don't know why anyone drives them.
Exactly. It's the electric car is so much simpler. And yet, nobody really realizes that because that just hasn't been our reality for the last 100 years. Like just the one thing that I think about every once in a while, like I'll be sitting in my car and maybe I've forgotten to unplug it, like I'm charging the car and I go to shift it into gear to drive away. But of course, the car knows it's still plugged in and it won't let you drive away. If you leave the gas pump thing in your car and you start it up and start to drive away, it will not stop you. And, you could blow up the entire gas station.
And it's happened. It has happened.
And it has happened.
Yeah. Didn't your gas nozzle fell off or your hose fell off in Seattle, right?
Right. I was driving to Seattle and filling up with gas, and it was the hose became detached from the where it was attached to the pump. It just fell off and went to the ground and spilled a puddle of gas on the ground and kind of horrified me.
I wanted to bring up something related to that that I've seen on YouTube, and it's an interesting point. And it is the issue of safety while charging, because EV chargers, and it varies from where you are in the world, and it varies within those regions as well, but they can often be in the back of a mall or at the edge of a parking lot. Yeah. And you could be there at night and they pointed out safety for women by themselves. And of course it would be a safety issue for anyone, but this particular person pointed out how they didn't feel comfortable doing it because you can't leave. That's the thing is you can't leave. If a creep comes up to you and harasses you or threatens you or tries to rob you, you can't just floor it and leave. You're stuck there because your car will not operate with a charging cable plugged in. And that's just something that we haven't talked about before.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah. I mean, I guess you would call 911 would be your best option, but
Yeah, I would rather peel out of there, and you just can't do that. So, I don't know. It's I guess you'll get accustomed maybe to charging stations where they are as you own the car, and you will find, I don't think it would be a problem anywhere in Regina where we live in a smaller city, but you never know. You never know. I mean, it could happen anywhere.
And this will be part of the evolution of charging stations. We're still in the early years of them, so they'll eventually be made hopefully better in more public spaces with security cameras.
Yes,
well lit, et cetera, et cetera.
Due to the the vandalism of copper from chargers, that they'll have to always have security cameras and always have maybe even AI that monitors for situations and irregularities. Of course, your Tesla cams will be assumably operational too. So yeah, I don't know, but yeah, so it goes for people who have driven in one as a passenger. It's 24%, which is double what they did if they didn't have any experience. But there's an important jump to 34% for the people who actually got to drive them. Maybe those are just the people who are more serious about buying one. I don't know, but everyone out there with your EVs, it's important that you let them drive it, that you let them drive in it, and help at this point of the world.
Okay, so we have some more natural gas news. So there's this organization called Transition Zero, and it's a nonprofit that monitors basically the cost of switching fuels in this era, particularly from coal. So we still have a lot of coal power generation around the world. And so they've been tracking this. It's not that old of an organization, but they've been tracking this for a couple of years. And of course, it's often brought up by people from the fossil fuel industry that, natural gas is our transition fuel. So, sure, we might be burning coal now, but we want to transition to natural gas and, eventually to clean fuels. But anyway, the point of no return has been reached. So they monitor the price of all these things in 25 different countries. And it is true that for the last several years, it will have been cheaper to switch from coal to natural gas. That this has been, just in terms of price, this has been a viable thing for the last several years. But as we were talking about earlier on the show, the price of natural gas has recently spiked. It's gone way up. And as the price of solar, wind, and batteries goes down, just this past year, we have now reached the tipping point, and it is no longer financially viable. It no longer makes financial sense to switch from coal to natural gas, just go straight to renewables. There is no more cost argument for that, because it's usually a cost argument in terms of switching to natural gas, and this includes the cost of batteries, because in order to completely replace a coal plant or a natural gas plant, you have to include battery storage in that. But of course, the cost of batteries has been dropping as well. So this is again big news. It sort of goes to what we talked about several times. Hopefully the big banks will stop financing these kinds of projects because they don't make financial sense. And that brings me to the sad news of our local utility, which we probably mentioned a couple of years ago on the podcast, is that they're building a new natural gas power plant here in our province near the beautiful city of Moose Jaw. And I just sort of did a little check on that to see where it's at. And it was, it was so depressing. Like this power plant, it was announced a couple of years ago. They squeaked it in just under the wire. I think they had to get special permission from the federal government to even build it, because it kind of, it bumps right up against the carbon reduction plans that we have in place for the whole country. So they got kind of special permission to sneak this one last project in. It's costing around $750 million. And it's not even open yet. I had no idea. It's not even going to be open until 2024.
That's almost nuclear timelines.
These are almost nuclear timelines. I couldn't believe it. So yeah, this is just super depressing. And the megawatts, so once it's completed in 2024, and even if it's on time and on schedule, and of course, I don't know, like the price of natural gas it could be absolutely obsolete by the time it flips the switch and opens up if the price of natural gas keeps going up. But anyway, it's 360 megawatts, which is a decent amount of power. But we always like to compare these things to Canada's largest solar farm. That's $700 million, and it's going to be 465 megawatts. Now, that doesn't include batteries, as we like to say, but this is very much along the lines of the price comparisons we like to do for nuclear. Nuclear is not even close. It cannot compete on price. This is definitely closer. But now, as I've said, we've reached this tipping point. It really is a kind of a sad state of affairs. So 700 million gets you 465 megawatts of solar, but only, 360 megawatts of natural gas, which you have to keep supplying with expensive natural gas instead of just letting the sun shine. So I don't know. I was pretty sad to read that and realize it's still like a couple of years away from even opening.
That's $750 million. That's a lot of money for a natural gas plant.
It's absolutely insane. It's really criminal, and it's just not. It's just
the damn thing might be shut out of business
decision.
in 10 years. Like what a waste of money. What a unforward-looking way to do things. And most of even here where we live in the Western Canada, it takes about 2 to 4 years from the very concept of having a solar farm to it opening up. Usually it's around 2 years, and the first year is environmental assessment, the second year is construction, and maybe a bit longer for wind because you have to do site analysis for a while. But it's fast and reliable. You know what you're getting. That's all I have to say. It's stupid.
And of course, maybe reduce the number of panels and throw in some batteries, and you're basically, basically at this point, kind of cost competitive, kind of exactly the same cost. But if it's exactly the same cost, why would you go with the one that's going to ruin the planet?
Yeah, they're starting to build a solar farm outside our city, just on the edge of our city in the northeast, with some batteries. And that is supposed to be operational by the end of the fall. So I'm just going to go have a look at that one of these days and take a picture, throw it on Twitter, see if they're broke the ground yet. Brian, the Newstatesman magazine, is it magazine or newspaper? As an avid reader of newspapers,
I'm thinking magazine, but go ahead.
Okay, the Newstatesman column written by a chair of a nuclear consulting group says that renewables, not nuclear, will do the heavy lifting in the energy transition. I thought it was an interesting column by somebody who knew something about what he was talking about. It wasn't just an opinion from a guy who has an opinion on a couch. It was a person who works in the industry. And I'll go through some of the points here. Boris Johnson, according to the column, hopes his dreams of a new nuclear plant every year are, just going to happen when they're not. He wants to open, it's hard to open one every century, it seems, these days. But there's little interest from the investment market, of course. You know why? Because they don't make money and it's a risk. And the fact that utility scale solar and onshore wind costs less than a quarter of new nuclear. That is the first time I've seen that figure. So new solar and onshore wind costs less than a quarter of new nuclear. That's pretty disruptive. I mean, it's not cheaper. It's a quarter the price.
Yeah.
So what's your reason? Why sun doesn't always shine? Well, batteries, storage. Come on. I don't understand this. So Hinkley Point C, where they are putting another reactor in, or one of the nuclear builds in the UK, where energy giant EDF is building 2 nuclear reactors, is overdue and over budget. Well, that's a pretty common thing to hear these days. It's be surprising if it wasn't. Costs have ramped up from the original estimate of 18 billion pounds to 26 billion pounds, which is pushing towards doubling. That's typical too. And the Somerset project is not due to open until June 2027, and more than likely quite a few years after that in reality. So Sizewell C is in Suffolk, which is supposed to be paid for with a new funding model that transfers risk from the developers to the consumer. Why? It's the only way they can bring in new investors if they put the risk of these stupid nuclear plants on you, the power consumer. And that's insulting and infuriating, and it's going to cause political instability once people get their bills. This places great financial liability unfairly and squarely on the shoulders of UK taxpayers and electricity consumers, who will be paying for huge upfront costs, inevitable delays, and further cost hikes. And sea level rise will increase coastal flooding, storm surges, and erosion, making current coastal nuclear infrastructure increasingly obsolete. So they have to come up with new kinds of infrastructure. And this means even more expense for a nuclear construction operation, and the operation as well of the whole plant, and waste management and decommissioning all take on larger costs because of climate change. And according to the UK Institute of Mechanical Engineers, even the relocation or abandonment of these current sites because of climate change, that's not going to happen. You're not going to pick up and move a nuclear plant a few miles inland. That's just not going to happen. It's it's not going to happen. The infrastructure for the power will be there, but holy crap. So even the UK investment minister recently concluded that wind farms in the North Sea will be more valuable to the UK than the oil and gas industry as a whole. So this is a huge transition point that we knew was coming, and we're into talking about it right now on the show.
And even just decommissioning these power plants is crazy expensive. Just to shut them down is crazy
expensive, and you gotta hide the fuel somewhere. Maybe in Arkansas. I'm just throwing that out there. Well, Brian, that brings us to the lightning round.
The Clean Energy Show lightning round.
Yes, this is where we fly through the headlines to give you some more information in short form. Tesla and others lobby for federal funding of charging infrastructure for electric trucks, that is, long-haul trucks. There hasn't been any discussion on this yet, Brian, because the trucks really haven't existed largely.
No, the only discussion has been about 20 minutes ago on this podcast, and it is kind of surprising to me that kind of charging stations are not more visible, including from Tesla, who's always been kind of at the head of the pack on these things. We've only seen so far a couple of Tesla semi-charging stations being built, so there's still a long way to go on this.
Chinese car builder, EV builder NIO, is looking at building a factory in the U.S., according to reports. What do you think? Because, this strikes me as weird, because the Chinese strength is their economic strength of manufacturing, their efficiencies and the way they can do it. And it's cheaper to manufacture something in China, obviously. And Tesla is reportedly making 20% extra on their markup in China from Chinese-built vehicles. So is it to appease Biden and his policies, or what?
Yeah, this has long been part of the auto industry that they've, over the last several decades, spread themselves out around the world as much as possible to ingratiate themselves, I think, with different governments. Like everybody wants to be seen as a job creator. So this could help allay people's fears about, and reticence that they might have about electric vehicles if they go ahead and build a plant in the U.S.
At a global tipping point, 52% of car buyers now want to purchase an EV. This is not the United States. This is the whole globe, the whole kit and caboodle. 52% of planet Earth is now looking at wanting to buy an EV. So that's a tipping point, because we pushed past the 50% mark.
Yeah, that's crazy. I guess, those Super Bowl ads, and it's finally starting to enter.
The Texans saw the ads, Brian. They saw that the F-150 powered your home. Some of them knew that. So they do work. It is a pretty mind-blowing thing if you have no idea that EVs exist and this truck is powering your home during a storm. Cool. So EV advantage number 732, less brake dust in high traffic areas. Something we don't talk about because, we talked about many advantages of EVs. We have not talked about this one. Generally, you're using your brakes less. You're using regenerative braking. The motor goes in reverse and generates electricity and that drags the car down to a stop if it's adjusted and used at a full advantage. So you hardly are using any brakes. So people who stand downtown in cities actually inhale a whole bunch of asbestos from the brake pads, which have to be made out of asbestos because they have to get hot, right?
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. So they're still using asbestos.
Modvion is developing wood tire. Okay, there's no way I could possibly say this was 4 hours of sleep. Modvion is developing wooden wind turbine towers. Wow. That should be an elocution sentence. Instead of steel or concrete, which they're traditionally made of, they're actually making them out of wood. And the idea is that they're lighter, so they're easy. These things are huge, right? They're like a city block long sometimes, so they're easier to carry if they're wood. It's not like they're cut down a tree and made it into a wood turbine. They're engineering this wood with glues and things and making structural things with it, like office towers.
No, exactly. And we talked about wooden office towers just a few weeks ago on the program. It is something that is kind of coming back in construction, and they're able to build much larger buildings out of wood than they used to, and potentially a much more environmentally friendly material.
So according to Bloomberg New Energy Finance, the advantages of wooden turbine towers include low embedded emissions, low weight, ease of transportation, fast assembly, and low volatility in raw material prices. The disadvantages are the lack of in-field experience and established supply chain, and I'm not sure that you can recycle them as easily as, say, a steel windmill. So German police raid the DWS and Deutsche Bank over greenwashing allegations. I just like that headline. It's a complicated story, but I like the headline. The German police have raided the Deutsche Bank for greenwashing allegations. They've actually raided the bank and to check out. So we'll see if that happens, if it goes anywhere, if they get charged.
I'm in favor of anything that involves raiding a bank.
Especially for greenwashing. Cambridge engineers have invented the world's first zero-emission cement. All right, Brian, buckle up. This is complicated.
Wow.
Okay. Are you sitting comfortably? The new process begins with concrete waste from demolition of old buildings. This is crushed to separate the stones and sand that form concrete from the mixture of cement powder and water that bind them together. The old cement powder is then used instead of lime flux in steel recycling. Okay? They usually use lime flux and steel recycling, so they use this stuff instead. There's a use for it, in other words. And as the steel melts, the flux forms a slag that floats on the liquid steel to protect it from oxygen in the air. After the recycled steel is tapped off, the liquid slag is cooled rapidly in air and ground up into a powder, which is virtually identical to the clinker, which is used in the bases of New Portland cement. And I can't say I understand everything I just said, but it's using something, making a use out of a closed loop. This is a closed loop deal, right? You're using something instead of something else. You can't really reuse the recycled concrete completely, but you can use it for something else instead of something. It creates zero emissions. Fatal heart rhythm disorder, which I've been watching closely, has been related to air pollution, according to a new study. As we watch for James to drop dead one of these days soon. So yes, air pollution is linked to fatal heart rhythm disorder. Another reason to go to EVs. Turkey has saved $7 billion in 12 months by replacing fossil fuels, natural gas and coal, imports by using wind, water, and solar. $7 billion in 12 months for the small country of Turkey. That is a big deal. A big deal. So they've cut their imports of natural gas and coal and just went with wind, water, solar. And, it surprises me the parts of the world that are taking advantage of the green revolution more than the countries that you think are the advanced countries. We don't get it. We've got blinders on here, it seems.
No, it could be that they have tighter budgets and they have to be more careful about how they spend it.
And finally this week, a new study published in Nature finds that Canada faces a U.S. $100 billion bill for stranded oil and gas assets in a 2 degrees world, in a 2 degrees Celsius warmed world. So Canada alone will have $100 billion US, which is more in Canada dollars, of stranded assets. Brian, that is our show for this week. We like to hear from you, the listener. We appreciate you listening to our show. Please subscribe to us or follow us so that you can get new shows delivered every week. Best way to contact us is by email, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. This is all in your show notes with your app, with the episode. And we're on Twitter, TikTok, Clean Energy Pod. Join us there for seeing video clips of our shows are on Twitter and Clean Energy Pod TikTok. So don't forget to check out our YouTube channel too for special features. Leave us a voicemail at speakpipe.com/Clean Energy Show. And I look forward to seeing everybody next week.
See you next week.